Hello, friends. You know things aren't going well when even your own supporters start to rebel. The Kronstadt sailors were once the Bolsheviks' golden boys, loyal revolutionaries who had played a key role in the October Revolution. They were the ones with rifles in hand, storming the Winter Palace and helping the Bolsheviks seize power. But just a few years later, these same sailors would be pointing those very rifles at the Bolsheviks themselves. Talk about an awkward breakup. By 1921, the honeymoon phase of the revolution was long over. War communism, the Bolsheviks' radical economic policy, had left the country in ruins. Food shortages, forced grain requisitions, and harsh repression had turned once loyal workers and peasants into bitter critics. And the Kronstadt sailors? Well, they were hungry, angry, and done with Bolshevik promises. The Kronstadt naval base was located on an island near Petrograd, modern-day St. Petersburg. The sailors there had sacrificed everything for the revolution, but now they were watching their families starve, while Bolshevik officials feasted on confiscated grain. They had fought for workers' freedom, not for a government that arrested peasants for hoarding potatoes. In March 1921, the sailors finally said, "Enough." They issued a list of demands, which ironically sounded a lot like the original Bolshevik slogans: free speech, fair elections, and an end to political repression. Basically, they wanted what the Bolsheviks had promised but never delivered. The Bolsheviks were having none of it. Lenin and Trotsky, who once praised the Kronstadt sailors as the pride and glory of the revolution, suddenly called them traitors and counter-revolutionaries. Funny how quickly old friends become enemies in politics. Trotsky, ever the firebrand, gave the sailors an ultimatum: surrender or be crushed. When the sailors refused, the Bolsheviks unleashed hell. They sent in 60,000 Red Army soldiers across the frozen Gulf of Finland. But here's the thing: the ice was thin, and so were their chances. Soldiers and horses kept falling through, disappearing into the freezing water. It was like nature itself was rooting for the sailors. But in the end, even nature couldn't save them. After days of intense fighting, the Red Army finally overpowered the rebels. The Kronstadt base fell. The sailors fought fiercely, but they were outnumbered, outgunned, and betrayed by the revolution they had once bled for. The aftermath? A bloodbath. Over 2,000 sailors were executed on the spot. Thousands more were sent to labor camps, where most of them never made it out. The Bolsheviks made no attempt to hide their brutality. They wanted everyone to know what happened to those who dared to oppose them. But despite their crushing victory, the rebellion shook the Bolsheviks to their core. It was a wake-up call. If even their most loyal supporters were rising up, something had gone terribly wrong. The rebellion revealed just how disillusioned ordinary people had become with Bolshevik rule. The Kronstadt uprising also forced Lenin to rethink his approach. The Bolsheviks had been running the country on ideology and brute force, but now they were facing a full-scale economic collapse. If they didn't change course, there might not be much of a revolution left to save. So Lenin did the unthinkable. He blinked. To pull Russia back from the brink, he announced the new economic policy, NEP. It was a partial retreat from hardcore communism, introducing market-like reforms and easing some of the harshest policies of war communism. But was the NEP a pragmatic compromise, or just a temporary bandage over a festering wound? Well, my friends, that's a story we'll unravel next time.